Hi, I'm Nick Shell, a certified Enneagram coach. I happen to be a 6 wing 7, counterphobic 6, by the way. I face my fears, I pretend like I'm not afraid, and I convince myself and most other people that I'm actually not afraid, that I actually am a very confident person. Am I? We may never know, because that's kind of how counterphobic 6 works. I wanted to shoot a video addressing my shadow self. Now, recently on this channel, I shared with you a song I wrote called Shadow Self, and it really breaks us down quite simply and I feel quite beautifully. I would love for you to check that song out here on there. Just look at my search box and you can type in Shadow Self song and see the song. But what I wanted to do is kind of deconstruct this, and in my, look at this, Enneagram journal, I wrote out exactly what my shadow self is. Now, by the way, this is a response to me watching on Netflix the documentary that Jonah Hill made with his psychiatrist, which is called Studs. I highly recommend it. It meant a lot to me. It really helped me. And he talks about the shadow self. So I'm making this video to understand, or to share with you, who my shadow self actually is. And I want to remind you and not insult you, the way YouTube works is, if you don't want me to be a single serving friend and you want me to show up again in your suggested feed, if you hit like, it tells the algorithm that you want more of me. And if you really want more of me, then you can always subscribe. But I understand you may have commitment issues, and that's okay. But when you want more of this guy in your news, I mean, there's all sorts of silly stuff showing up in your feed. Why not have me, right? Okay, so my shadow self. I want to show you what mine looks like as, again, a counterphobic 6. I would love for you to tell me what your shadow self looks like, especially if you're a 6. Tell me in the comments. Here's mine. And again, this is coming from my journal. I would highly recommend, by the way, you do this. Get an Enneagram journal, and when you have these epiphanies, get them out on paper. You owe it to yourself, and you owe it to the people around you that you love to tell them this. That's a lot of our growth as a 6. Here we go. Here's what I wrote. Shadow self. My actual shadow self is the scared, quiet little boy who felt insignificant and unworthy of staying committed to. I had this fear that my parents were going to leave, or my family was going to leave, and I would be separated from them. Kind of a Five Goes to America. That came out when I was in kindergarten. It's that same thing, though. They'd be separated from your parents or family. Therefore, as a coping mechanism, I developed an alter ego who was strong enough to get me through the past 30 years, because this is the last day of 2022 as I'm filming this. So from 92, when I started doing that, when I was in like 5th grade, until now, at age 41. And I just understood that about myself this year. So now the smoke's clearing for me understanding that. So it's strong enough to get me through the past 30 years without realizing it. However, the alter ego began overpowering the shadow self, who never really went away, as evidenced by my triggers, which I will be making videos about that separately. So now that I'm awake and I understand this, it's my responsibility to find the balance between the shadow self and the alter ego, since up to now I have been in a Stockholm syndrome situation where I finally released myself. So to others, it is important that I inform those closest to me that I've discovered who I actually am. A scared, quiet little boy on the inside who's afraid of being chosen over by his family members, so he has a habit of acting angry and controlling as a result of fear, which leads to resentment, which leads to anger, which leads to suffering to all of those around me, which keeps me from actually having that safe, comfortable family environment that I want. So, that whole thing where your worst fear becomes true because you fear it to begin with. So that's something I've sorted out. And something I also wrote here on this about that. There's a quote from Yoda that I changed just a little bit. And the quote, and I basically referenced it, but again, this is Yoda, but I've changed it a little bit. Fear is the path to the dark side. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to resentment. Resentment leads to suffering for all around me, including myself. So I think that's very true. For myself specifically, and if you're a 6, there's a good chance that you act out of fear, even if you're trying to face your fear, and then that causes you to look like this angry person because you go straight to anger instead of realizing what you're actually fearing. So again, be on the lookout for those videos I will make about my triggers. I want to end this video though by just going a little bit deeper about Stockholm syndrome, and because I've learned a lot of people are not familiar with this, and it's very important that you know what that means. So, and just Google it. But I mean, when you look up Stockholm syndrome, it's this concept, and this has happened in real life, in history, to people throughout the world, where someone would be kidnapped, and when they have a chance to escape, they don't. Instead, they help and protect the person who kidnapped them because they have this empathy, because they see this person now as someone who's protecting them. So can you see how if I'm ultimately a shy, scared little boy that had to have my parents pick me up from spending nights as a little kid multiple times, if that's who I was as a little kid, and then I overcame that, you can understand that this scared little boy appreciated this alter ego that I developed. This sounds like a Fight Club, isn't it? I've always loved that movie, where the alter ego starts protecting and taking care of the weaker version. So as a 41-year-old now, what I am understanding is, and the pastor of my church had recently said this, your coping strategies and mechanisms that help you get through your childhood and your youth and your 20s and 30s start holding you back in your 40s. And here I am in my 40s, and now I'm understanding and accepting this. That who am I? Well, my shadow self is this quiet, insecure little boy who's afraid of everything and fears being separated from family. My alter ego is this outgoing, assertive person that people think is the real me. And if you ask me, I say that's not the real me. But most people see that is the real me. And when I'm most stressed, that alter ego is even more prominent. What I'm doing right now is I'm learning that the real me is probably somewhere in between that weak shadow self, the insecure, scared little boy, and this overpowering person that has a very strong appearance and is very direct. But that's not good in itself. That can be too much. I can be too little and I can be too much. So what I have to do is I have to find that balance. And that's my personal growth modern day. Now that I understand that about myself, find that balance in between to where I'm not afraid and I'm not too much for people. That I can be dependable and loyal, all the things that we want to see from someone who's an Enneagram 6, because we are the loyalist. How can I be there for people around me? How can I be there for my family without looking like an 8? Because that's a lot of it for me. When I look like an 8 and act like an 8 and think like an 8, it usually means I'm that much more afraid of losing something I already have. And that's why I act that way. And now I understand that better. So that I've even told my family that. When I start acting like that, it probably is an indication that one of my triggers is going off and I'm somehow afraid that I won't feel close to my family. I know that might not quite make sense now, but stay tuned. I'm about to film several videos about my individual unique triggers. Are they unique? We'll find out when you watch those videos and leave a comment so I can learn. As for now though, why don't you leave a comment below about anything you can relate to in this video, because hey, I know I'm not alone and I know you're not alone in this. We need to talk about this. This is important. This is healthy and this is good. And this is a good way to spend your time. And again, if you need me to show up more in your news feed, hit like and the algorithm will take care of the rest.